When we think about games that change dramatically over the course of their development cycles, GTA 3 is probably one of the first games that comes to mind. It started out looking wildly different to the game that we ended up playing. And because the game changed so much, there have been some interesting discoveries among the game's files over the years. Take the buggy for example, a cut car that's different to the BF injection. Or how about the fact that a whole multiplayer mode was cut from the game, and people have managed to restore the multiplayer levels through the use of mods. But that got me thinking, are there any beta leftovers that you can see in Grand Theft Auto 3 without mods? And so, join me as we discuss 50 beta leftovers you can see in GTA 3 without needing to use mods. It's fairly common knowledge that early on in GTA 3's development there were school buses in the game. And in the final game you can still see them, kind of. I'm talking about these wrecks, of course. You can find most of them near Capital Autos here. They're missing their wheels and there's no way of getting inside them or driving off. There are also no seats inside, and they're missing a back door. So yeah, there are 3 here, and there's one down near 8 Ball's place as well. And another one near the car crusher. In addition to the school buses, there's also the old school hall near the Callahan Bridge. It's used in the mission The Fuzzball, where you have to deliver a few of Luigi's girls to the annual policeman's ball. As an aside, most people don't realise that, in addition to the banner over the door, there's also this larger banner on the side of the building. Also, the old school hall is a potential destination in the taxi side missions. So perhaps, along with the school buses, this building would have been a fully functioning school at one point in the game's development. But now, all we know is that it's home to the policeman's ball once a year. Secondly, there's a well-known Easter egg. Shooting the moon with the sniper rifle makes it bigger or smaller. This is actually something I discussed in a recent video where we looked at 100 Easter eggs and references in GTA 3. However, it turns out that it's not really an Easter egg after all. In fact, it was never meant to be included in the game. Former technical director of Rockstar North, Obi Vermey, shared this on X not long ago. To summarise, Obi put this feature in the game so that the artists could test what size they wanted the moon to be. However, the artists never confirmed their preference, and therefore this feature was never removed. So there you go, it was never meant to be an Easter egg, it was a leftover piece of QA that was never restored. Another fairly well-known thing about the development of GTA 3 is that the cop cars used to be blue and white. At some point, perhaps due to the events of 9/11, they were changed to black and white. However, Rockstar didn't quite change everything about the LCPD to black instead of blue. Take the Staunton Island Police Headquarters for example. If you look at the front of the building, there's a sign for the LCPD. And yes, it's still in the old blue and white colours. It was never updated to black and white. And here's another example. When you accumulate several wanted stars, the police helicopter will come after you. If you've ever looked closely at it, you'll have seen that it's blue and white as well. A leftover from the old LCPD colours that was never updated to match the likes of the police car and the Enforcer. How about the Predator, which is the police boat? Well, you've probably guessed it by now, but that was still blue and white as well. You can get a good look if you intentionally beach it, so you can see more of the hull. So yeah, white on top and blue at the bottom. The ship's hull was never changed to black. At this point, I'm wondering whether there are more things that they didn't change rather than changed about the LCPD. Next is the legendary Ghost, the boat that features in the mission Gone Fishing from Ray Machowski. In the mission, you have to take out Ray's former partner, and so it makes sense that the boat he drives is actually a modified Predator. It's the same shape, but in a different colour, and it doesn't have the guns that the usual Predator has. And it also has issues with its name. which reads Ghost Missing instead of just Ghost. And the fact that the cabin is glitchy, you can see right through it. But the beta leftover about this boat is actually its colour. It's called Police Car Blue, and it's the same colour that would have been applied to the police cars and enforcers back when they were blue and white. It looks a little lighter due to the metallic finish that's applied to the vehicles in the game. But yeah, the original LCPD colour. However, the colour of the Ghost was updated to black on the PC version of the game, before reverting to blue again in subsequent releases, such as the Definitive Edition. Driving around Liberty City, you may have seen that there are road signs situated above the streets. On Portland, you can see signs for the Westport Bridge. If you're wondering what the Westport Bridge is, well, it's an earlier name for the Callahan Bridge. So at some point during development, the bridge's name was changed, but the developers never changed these signs. So they still read Westport Bridge instead. In the cutscene for Joey's missions, you can see a BF injection in the garage here. And we can even glitch inside this building to get a better look. This BF injection is a beta version of the vehicle. There's the colour scheme, for example, which isn't an option in the playable BF injection. And then there's the fact that its paint is matte as opposed to metallic. The wheels too. During development, all the game's vehicles had these placeholder wheels, which were eventually given to the sports car class of vehicles. For whatever reason, they never changed this model of the BF injection at Joey's garage. Also, you can see a shell of what is likely a Mafia Sentinel in here. This also seems to be a pre-release version of the car, but it's harder to tell as it's missing things like doors and wheels and more. However, the giveaway is its engine. It's a pre-release version of the engine texture, and you can see how it differs to the final version here. It's a shame that this model isn't a bit more complete, as I'm sure we would have had more to compare. In the mission Dead Skunk in the Trunk, there's this Manana, which you have to take to the car crusher to complete the mission. And the vehicle's horn sounds like this. Whereas the horn for the standard Manana sounds like this. Therefore, the horn sound for the Manana must have been changed at some point during the game's development. The one on the standard Manana is the final version. However, the developers likely forgot to update it on the Manana in Dead Skunk in the Trunk as well, meaning that we get to hear its beta horn sound. You're probably familiar with the Dodo, the clipped wings plane that you can still fly after learning how. And then there's the Deaddodo, the fully winged aeroplane that flies around Liberty City and features in a couple of missions, including a drop in the ocean. If we compare the two planes, there is actually a subtle difference, as opposed to the wings, of course. The Deaddodo still has the old matte paint finish that was on all the vehicles during development, whereas the playable Dodo has the metallic finish applied. It's not as obvious a difference compared to the likes of the BF injection in Joey's garage, but the Deaddodo is actually from an earlier phase of development, before the metallic finish was applied to other vehicles. Okay, onto the introduction, the cutscene that plays at the beginning of the game. There are quite a few interesting details here, some of which you might not have noticed. First is the Banshee, which Miguel is seen driving. It's in a unique silver colour that isn't seen anywhere else in the game. It's likely that there was a silver colour available for the Banshee at one point, but it was removed. But the devs never updated the cutscene Banshee to match the updated version of the vehicle. And then there's Claude himself. This cutscene uses an earlier version of Claude, with different facial features. You can see the differences between them here. Even in the subsequent cutscene on the Callahan Bridge, it's the normal updated Claude model that's used. So it was just this opening cutscene which uses an older model. Again, it was never updated by the developers before GTA 3's initial release. After the initial scene with the bank heist, we see a newspaper on the screen. On the right hand side there is an article about Luigi who we'll go on to work for. But it's the photo that's used which is of interest to us. If you've ever wondered what this photo is, well, it's this one. It's actually a screenshot taken from an earlier phase of development. You can see Luigi getting into a stretch driven by Claude. So this shot is likely from the mission Salvatore's called a meeting. The black stretch has a shinier finish than in the final game, while the taxi and perennial behind it are, of course, also in their beta states. Again, this is something that would never be updated for the initial release of GTA 3. I guess they thought we'd never notice. One of the vehicles involved in the cutscene is this Patriot. Unlike to the Banshee, this Patriot is in a beta colour scheme, black. But not regular black, fully black. Not just the body, but the bumpers as well. This is not a colour of Patriot that is seen at any other point in the game. This was likely a colour scheme for the vehicle that was removed during development but wasn't changed in the cutscene. However, I believe it was changed at least in some subsequent releases, such as the PC version of GTA 3, where it was no longer entirely black. Also in the introduction, you can see the Cartel members who stopped the convoy to kidnap the old Oriental Gentleman. These Cartel members are actually pre-release versions. Their clothes are mostly grey or black with red collars. As you can see here, these are the Cartel NPCs that you can find in Liberty City. One with a red shirt and one with a blue shirt. These cutscene Cartel guys are never seen again, only here, and were never updated by the devs in this cutscene. And what about the Rumpo that they jump out of? During this part of the cutscene, a beta Rumpo is used, in contrast to the scene before this where the convoy is driving onto the bridge. This Rumpo lacks some of the detail found on the final Rumpo, mainly the indentations in the door and side panels, but it also has a brighter white colour, whereas the final version looks darker. Another example of a beta model that wasn't updated for the release of the game. How about the Enforcer? Well, it's black and white, the colours of the LCPD in the game. But the police logo on the side is still in the original LCPD blue. It's strange that they changed the rest, but not this logo. There's also the destroyed Enforcer that appears after the introduction at the start of Give Me Liberty. Similarly, this too has the blue police logo on the side, but strangely it's also a silver colour as opposed to black and white. I don't know whether it was ever intended to be this colour during development, but whatever the case, it does not represent the Enforcer that appears on the final game. There's also another wreck here too, this Mafia Sentinel. It's not like the others in the game, this one is green, black and silver. This always intrigued me as it doesn't match any of the pre-release screenshots we have of this vehicle. So it's not like the Mafia Sentinel even looked like this at one point. So I have no idea why this is here, it wasn't even in the convoy. But no matter the reason, it's still a beta leftover from a time in development when its inclusion might have made more sense. And then there's the famous Kuruma, famous for being a unique colour, and often the starting point for secret vehicles guides in GTA 3. But why does it have a unique colour? I've always wondered whether this was a colour of the Kuruma that existed in the beta of GTA 3, but was culled in the final game except for its inclusion in this mission. Way back in development we would have driven a purple coloured Sentinel in Give Me Liberty, which was subsequently changed to the Kuruma. So this is a speculative one, something we may never know the reason behind. On the in-game radio stations you can hear an advert for the Maibatsu Monstrosity. Let's take a listen.
I'm a marketing manager who lives in the suburbs and commutes to work on the highway. I live alone, so of course I needed a car that could seat 12 and is equipped to drive across Arctic tundra. It just makes me feel better.
The new Maibatsu Monstrosity. Mine is bigger.
But what is the Maibatsu Monstrosity? The answer lies in the instruction manual, where there's a picture of it, and here it is. What this vehicle is a beta Landstalker. We can compare it to the pre-release images of the car. So what likely happened was that the devs decided to reuse the pre-release model of the Landstalker for the Maibatsu Monstrosity adverts. So next time you hear this ad in GTA 3, you'll know what it references. Let's talk about this game's opening movie. The version you can see on screen right now is from the North American version of the game. It has the black police cars and enforcers from the LCPD. However, if we were to view the same opening movie on the European version of the game instead, you'll see blue police cars and enforcers instead. This was a beta leftover that can be found only in the PAL version of GTA 3, and as we saw, Rockstar fixed it for future releases and ports of the game. Near the subway entrance in Shoreside Vale, you can see this poster for a fictional movie, The Tunnel. The image that the devs used for this movie poster is actually another beta screenshot of the game, this one, which shows a Mafia Sentinel in the Porter Tunnel, chased by a police car, with 2 taxis and a pony in the background. So this is an old beta screenshot which the devs decided to reuse as a movie poster. But this screenshot can also still be seen inside Salvatore's house as well, right on the wall here. Something we talked about before on the channel is the emergency vehicle crane in Portland. You have to take one of each emergency vehicles to it, which gets lifted onto the ship over there. There's usually no way to get on this ship aside from flying there in a Dodo or the Rhino with the flying cars cheat enabled. Arguably the most interesting thing about it is that it has an unfinished interior. If you drop down here, you can see through this wall where we can find some lifeboats and some sets of stairs. There are 2 in the foreground and more in the background, which you need a sniper rifle to see from this position. Also, if we look up, we can see the remnants of an entrance and an upper floor. I wonder what the purpose of this interior would have been. During the intro to Lips 106, a cut song can be heard. Let's take a listen. The full song cannot be heard anywhere in the game, only this short snippet. It was cut for unknown reasons, and the only reason we can listen to the full version is because all the Lips 106 songs were uploaded to iTunes back in around 2011, and subsequent platforms like Amazon Music since then. The song is Wash Him Off by Mary Dancing. A beta leftover can also be heard during the cutscene for the mission Gang Car Roundup by King Courtney. He asks you to collect some gang cars, and among others, he mentions a Diablo Infernus.
I want me a Mafia Sentinel, a Yakuza Stinger, and a Diablo Infernus so we can hit up any gang in Liberty.
Therefore, people believe that at one point in the game's development, the Diablos would have driven Infernuses. In the final game, however, they drive Diablo Stallions. We sadly don't have any screenshots of the Diablo Infernus. Just this one of the Diablo Stallion, which is actually named the Diablo car back then. This general term of car does hint towards the fact that it wasn't always the Stallion that was used. So there you go, a beta audio leftover which was still in the game. If you've played GTA 3, you'll probably be familiar with the RC car missions which begin from the Toys vans. This is one on Shoreside Vale named Rumpo Rampage, where you have to destroy as many Hood's Rumpo XLs as you can in the time limit. However, if we look at this mission in the stats menu, it has a different name, Rumpo Wrecker. The name of this mission was likely changed during development, and the devs forgot to change its name in the stats menu. We looked at the introduction cutscene earlier, but let's take a closer look at Ghost Town now. This is where the intro takes place, and it's located behind Shoreside Vale. Next to nothing is solid here, so we can't land and walk around. However, we can fly past. There are 3 different vehicles here, a Securicar, an Esperanto, and a Mr. Wong's. All these vehicles are in beta forms and exhibit differences to the final versions of these same cars. The Securicar has white bars, door mirrors, and more. On the final model, they're all silver. The Esperanto has white bumpers and door mirrors too, while it's also in a beta colour scheme. You can't see this dark blue Esperanto anywhere else. Oh, and it still has the matte paint finish as opposed to the metallic finish. And lastly, there's the Mr. Wong's. Again, this is an older style matte paint finish, and like the Esperanto, it's also in a beta colour. You cannot see this light blue Mr. Wong's anywhere else. As an aside, did you know that the Mr. Wong's was the original gang car for the Triads, rather than the Triad fish van? It's mentioned in the game's manual, which is how we know. Ultimately, the Mr. Wong's plays only a minor role in the game, featuring in the mission taking out the laundry, and being parked at the laundrette in Chinatown. Okay, in the mission The Getaway for Joey Leone, the robbers say get to the bank on the main drag.
Get us to the bank on the main drag.
This line of dialogue is a reference to an earlier phase of the game's development, where there would have been one long road going right through Portland, like a main drag strip. We can see this in early screenshots of the game. However, at one point there was a row of buildings placed in between to break it up, with an alleyway in the middle. So this line of dialogue is a leftover from a much earlier version of GTA 3. It makes me wonder whether this mission was one of the first to be made. Okay, in various spots in Liberty City we can see a billboard for a radio station named Liberty Soul FM. This could be a beta cut radio station from the game's development. According to the design document that was shared in video form by GTA Series Videos, there were originally going to be 6 radio stations in GTA 3, and later in the same document the number of stations had been increased to 8. Could Liberty Soul FM have been one of them? In the final game there were 9 stations in total. There's also this billboard for another radio station that's not in the game, the Zone 34.9 FM. Could this too have been a potential radio station at one point in the game's development which was ultimately cut? And just above that there's a billboard for Liberty FM Q120.5. And this makes it a hat trick of cut stations that still have leftover billboards in GTA 3. I wonder if they might have been part of that original 6 or 8 stations. And while I've mentioned these stations on the channel before, take a look at this one. In the Shoreside Vale subway there's this small poster for radioactive. The icon in the middle looks a bit like a hazardous warning sign, but also like one of the reels on an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. I don't believe this poster appears anywhere else, but there we go. A real relic of a bygone GTA 3 era of now defunct radio stations. An intriguing building in Staunton Island is this one, the Orbit building. It has logos on either side of the main entrance, which makes it seem like an important landmark. It's also listed in the map within the instruction manual, which typically includes places of interest. But this building has no use, and the Orbit company appears nowhere else, aside from on a sign near the Morningstar building, which is partially obscured by trees. Unfortunately, we don't know what Rockstar's intentions were for the Orbit building, and we may never know. And speaking of the Morningstar building, this is the next item in our video. This building is located over near Kenji's Casino on Staunton Island, and has a big sculpture of a star in the courtyard outside. You can even scale the star by simply walking up it. The building itself is a large skyscraper, and there's a Morningstar logo on it too. The Morningstar Corporation and building are mentioned in the GTA 3 design document, shown on the GTA Series Videos channel. According to this document, missions would have taken place here, and there would have been specific Morningstar Corporation peds roaming around. But unfortunately these plans were scrapped and the building remains in the game as a beta leftover. There's a taxi destination in GTA 3 by the name of Museum, which you can see here. However, the same location is labelled as City Hall in the instruction manual. This likely means that the building changed use during the game's development, either from the museum to City Hall, or vice versa. Either way, both names for the building exist in different places. Here's one that was recommended to me. There's this building in Staunton Island, which is inspired by the real-life Flatiron building in New York City. If we use the ghost car glitch to go inside, we can check out what's in here. In this main area, the walls reflect the textures on the outside of the building, and there's also a crude roof texture up there. But if we go through this wall and into this small section where the building narrows, it becomes different. It's an entirely closed space with a lower roof and back wall, and they're all textured. Well, basically anyway. It has been suggested that this building could have been the beginnings of some kind of interior for this building, and it's actually a similar story at the other end of these buildings too. Personally, I'm not completely convinced that these are the makings of interiors, but they are intriguing if nothing else. They certainly feel different to other unused buildings in the game. One of the first missions in the game is Luigi's Girls. Now, have you ever wondered why this mission is called Luigi's Girls when it only involves one girl, Misty? Well, the YouTuber Vadim M discovered that you originally had to pick up 2 girls during this mission, Misty and Trixie. But at some point in the game's development, this was reduced to just 1. So the mission was changed, but its title was never updated. If you've played GTA 3 or any subsequent GTA title, you'll be familiar with the loading screens that feature different characters. There are quite a few of them and feature people like Misty, Kenji and Donald Love. However, have you ever seen this one in particular? It doesn't seem to represent any of the characters in GTA 3. Well, this is a beta artwork of Toni Cipriani, believe it or not. But that's because the concept for Toni drew inspiration from Joe Pesci, a familiar face in Mafia-themed movies, as well as Home Alone. However, at some point the concept for this character changed to the Toni we now see in GTA 3, who was voiced by Michael Madsen. This is the Yakuza Stinger. One thing I want to draw your attention to is the emblem on the front here. It's silver. And if we take a look around the side, we can see the door handles are silver too. Don't worry, I am going somewhere with this, I promise. At the back, the emblem is also silver. Now if I damage the car, let's take a look again. The emblem on the front is now red, as are the door handles and also the emblem at the back, although it's a little harder to see. But what this means is that there are obviously differences between the intact car model and the damaged car model. It's likely that at one point the devs decided that this vehicle would have red emblems, but changed their minds and turned them silver. But they only changed the intact model and not the damaged model. In the cutscene for the mission Espresso to Go, Asuka mentions the Kappa coffee house.
He has some of that famous Latin stamina. I'm quite exhausted. We underestimated Catalina's plans for Spank. It reaches far beyond the yardies selling it on the street corners. The Cartel have a front company, the Kappa Coffee House. They've been selling...
Whereas the name of the mission is of course Espresso to Go, and the coffee company named on the coffee stands is Espresso to Go as well. So where does the Kappa Coffee House name come into it? Well, this is likely what the Cartel Coffee Company was going to be called at one point in development, but was changed to Espresso to Go at some point. It's just this one mention in the cutscene that wasn't changed. Similarly, in the mission Big and Veiny for El Boro, he mentions a magazine called Donkey Does Dallas.
All over Liberty. Take the van and follow that trail of Donkey Does Dallas volumes 1, 2, and 3, collecting it as you go.
However, the magazines that you have to collect during the mission are actually called Muff and the Mule. And they're also the same as the ones that appear at your safe house after you complete the mission. So what happened to Donkey Does Dallas? Well, this too was probably an older name for the magazine featured in this mission, and at some point it was changed to Muff and the Mule. There's an advert you can see in Liberty City for a fictional clothing company called Gasoline. However, during development, the company's name was Petrol instead, which we can see in beta screenshots. And if you've ever seen my recent video on Easter eggs and references, you'll know that it's a reference to the real-life clothing company, Diesel. Anyway, so check this out. If you move far away from the Diesel advert here, you can see the lower poly texture that replaces the regular one. And the lower poly texture for the Diesel advert still says Petrol. So they changed the high-res texture, but forgot to update the low-res texture to match. It's probably worth mentioning the McAdam Airways advert too. During development, this company's name was Plummet Airways. This was something that was likely changed after the events of 9/11. There isn't a low-res texture or anything that still says plummet, sadly. However, if you look at the name of the texture, it's still called plummet. So next time you see this advert in GTA 3, remember that this image is still named Plummet. A character we briefly see in the introduction is the old Oriental Gentleman, who is taken by the Cartel. He reappears later in the storyline in Liberator for Donald Love, where you rescue him from the Cartel. And after that, he does some Tai Chi with Donald Love in his rooftop garden, and also shows up in escort service. However, it's never really explained who he is or why he's here, or even why he's wanted by both the Cartel and Donald Love. Well, it turns out that the old Oriental Gentleman is a beta leftover. A leftover of the original storyline for GTA 3. If you want to learn more about this in detail, I recommend the GTA series video on the topic, which I'll link in the description. Anyway, in short, he was originally intended to be a plate engraver, and the Yakuza would have originally freed him as opposed to the Cartel, as he was crucial to their counterfeiting operations. But as the storyline changed, the Oriental Gentleman's involvement became nothing short of mysterious, and he doesn't really add anything to the story in GTA 3 itself. In the cutscene for Bullion Run, D-Ice says that an aeroplane has crash-landed at Francis International Airport and has spilled its cargo. And notably, its cargo is platinum.
Yo, a Federal Reserve flight just smashed down at Francis International. There's platinum all over the strip. Get a car and snatch up as much as you can. You can drop the bling off at one of my garages. This platinum is mad heavy and it'll slow your wheels down some, so make regular drop-offs at the garage.
If we go to Pike Creek and once we enter a vehicle, the platinum will spawn. But that's strange looking platinum. Instead of being silver coloured, it's gold. So what's the deal here? Again, thanks to GTA series videos, we can see what Rockstar's original intentions were for this mission. And it turns out that you were supposed to be collecting gold rather than platinum. So the devs originally designed these pickups to be gold, but never changed their colour after it was decided that they should be platinum instead. However, they were eventually changed from gold coloured to silver coloured in some subsequent releases of GTA 3, such as the PC port. During the cutscene for the exchange, we can see another beta Cartel gang member. He's the one in the dark blue shirt here, and this same model also shows up during the introduction. As a reminder, these are the two Cartel members that appear in the game. The one with the red shirt and another with a blue shirt. This guy is a beta leftover who we only see in a couple of cutscenes. There's a billboard for a fictional movie called Badfellas, which is a parody of Goodfellas. The interesting thing here is the image that the devs used. They've used several alpha renders of some of the game's characters to create it, including Salvatore, Luigi, Joey, and even 8-Ball gets involved. Like the movie poster for the tunnel we saw earlier in the video, it's cool to see how the devs reuse these beta assets to create these movie billboards. And last of all, we're going to look at the mission Marked Man. In the mission, you take Ray to the airport, then he gives you the keys to his lockup. It contains a bulletproof Patriot and some weapons. When you open Ray's garage though, you get a message on your pager from Ray. At the end, it says, "See you in Miami." Of course, the sequel GTA Vice City was based on the real-life city of Miami. However, the game was set in 1986. It doesn't feature Claude or Ray. So how does Ray's line make sense? Well, Rockstar's original intention for GTA Vice City wasn't to make a standalone game. Instead, GTA Vice City was intended to be something of an add-on or expansion pack for GTA 3. So does Ray's line of "See you in Miami" mean that Vice City was originally intended to be set in the present, and would have at least featured some of the same characters, namely Claude and Ray? This line of dialogue therefore references Rockstar's original intentions for a modern day Vice City sequel. And that was the last one. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.